Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. People sharing their story, sharing their journey. A journey is not a destination, it's a process. Life is a journey. Our special guests today are Ron and Michelle Stevens from Nevada, near Carson City. And they're going to share their journey of what's been happening with them, particularly the last year or two. Ron and Michelle, it's good to have you here. We've got people from really around the world that are watching this program. We want to learn a little bit about you before we start talking about the particular journey you're on right now. Ron, where are you from?
Well, I was born in Grafton, West Virginia. However, I grew up in Redondo Beach, California.
Okay. So did you go through all your schooling there in Redondo, or?
Yes, I did,
Okay.
except for college, which I went to college at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Okay. And tell us where you're from, Michelle.
I'm from Los Angeles, California, near LAX, the airport. I grew up there, and I went to UCLA, and
What did you do at UCLA?
became an X-ray technician.
Okay. And graduated from UCLA?
Their
All right.
X-ray program.
And then started your own business, if I remember
Exactly.
correctly. Okay. And Ron, where did you take your schooling?
Well, most of it, again, was Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for undergraduate school. I got a degree in accounting.
At Cal Poly.
Right.
Okay. And then from there, did you have any additional schooling?
I did not.
Okay. Formal schooling anyway. So what kind of work did you get into then?
Well, I became an auditor. I worked for, this will date me a lot, a company called Arthur Young, which is now
Well, I've
Ernst
heard
and
of
Young.
them, Ernst
Yes,
and Young.
it's
Okay.
Ernst and Young now. I worked for them. Then from there, I moved to Occidental Petroleum Corporation. I worked there for 23 and a half years in the controller's office and the treasurer's office.
Okay.
And during one of their downsizings, I was let go along with quite a few other people. And then I went out and I purchased a business. I ran a business for a while, and then I retired.
Okay. And if I remember, was it a swimming pool business?
It was a swimming pool.
Okay. Now, where did the two of you meet? Michelle.
Well, sounds kind of contrite. We met at a Mexican restaurant, and it was just kind of funny. I had dressed quickly and met some friends, and I had a necklace on, and as I went by Ron, my shoe slipped, and I kind of hit him, and my necklace fell off.
Oh, I mean, I've heard them all, Ron. This is,
Yeah.
So your necklace falls off as you're going by Ron, and what happened to your shoe?
Well, it kind of hit his leg.
Oh, it kind of bumped his leg.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose you bumped it first, and then the necklace fell off.
Exactly.
Oh, sure.
Exactly.
I mean, this is
She's tricky.
This is something else. Okay,
Yes.
so you're in this Mexican restaurant.
Yeah, and so, of course, I went, ugh. And so he turned around, he felt that kick on his leg, and he helped me with my necklace. And we started talking, and
Wow,
that's how it
one
all
thing
began.
led to another. So, where were you living at the time, both of you?
I was living in Redondo Beach, and Michelle was living in the Palms area of
Okay.
Los Angeles,
Okay,
West
so
Los
in the
Angeles.
general area there. All right.
Right.
So, everything's going fine. You get married. Now, I understand you have one son.
yes.
Okay. And tell us about your son.
Would you like to tell him?
Sure.
You're his dad.
Our son is 21 years old. He's going to Tulane University. He's studying economics and political science
At Tulane.
at Tulane University. He's doing a study abroad program this year, and he's at the London School of Economics and Political Science. He's really thrilled. He realizes he's being challenged more so than he's used to, and he was informed that there are a lot of standards that they expect him to live up to. And so he's doing that.
He must be a very bright individual.
He graduated number 2 in his high school class. He lost the valedictorian by 0.03 of a percentage point.
Wow.
So
Okay.
he graduated with a 4.67 GPA.
And Tulane is in New Orleans.
That's correct.
Okay. So is he a junior or a senior?
He's a junior.
He's a junior, and he's over in London for the year. Okay. So now we're going to be talking about cancer here, and I know we got some cancer in the background. Apart from yourself, did you have anybody in your family that had cancer?
No.
So it was the first time. How about you? Anybody in your family have cancer?
My father died from cancer, as did his brother and sister.
And what kind of cancers did they have?
Well, my father had lung cancer. My uncle had stomach cancer of some nature. I'm not don't have any more details.
Sure.
And my aunt, she died from lung cancer as well.
Okay. Now, Michelle, you've had some cancers. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the first one was at 9 years old.
I mean, you started early.
Yeah, I did, and here I am. But anyway, my mom, I guess I was washing my face and neck, and I felt a big lump, and I said, "Look, Mom," and she saw this lump, and we went, of course, to the doctor, and it was a malignant follicular lymphoma, and
So it's
they
a
removed
lymphoma.
it.
Okay.
And they removed it, and so I was fine. I think the only thing that I remembered at the time was the ether.
Well, now, you're talking about a major surgery for a 9-year-old girl.
Right. It was right next to my vocal cords. And so, in fact, my parents had to sign a slip, of liability, that I may not speak again. But they were very happy.
Always a risk involved.
Of course, there were always
Sure.
risks. But since it was malignant, they wanted it out. And when I woke up, I was singing, "Jesus Loves Me." And even the doctor, I think, had tears. I mean, that's kind of what I would imagine, because they were all waiting for me to
see whether or not you could speak or not.
Yeah, there I was singing.
Now, you didn't have just a normal surgeon. Your parents requested what kind of a surgeon?
Well, at the time, I'm 64, so 9 years old is a long way. My parents didn't have a lot of money, but the one thing they felt, I was a girl, and they asked a plastic surgeon to come in and open and close it. Normally back then they did the cutting this way, and instead the plastic surgeon went across, and that way as a scar formed, it would go in the wrinkles of my neck. And he did a beautiful job, and I'm very thankful.
Your parents were very wise.
Yes, absolutely.
Thinking ahead, yeah. I mean, you can't say anything. I mean, I had a surgery in my throat when I had my thyroid removed, and there's just a little bit of a scar, but I didn't have the fortune to bring in a plastic surgeon.
I was very
lucky.
lucky.
So at age of 9, did you have any other follow-up treatment or just the surgery?
Oh, I went and for quite a few years and just had follow-up.
Just making sure that everything was, but you didn't have chemo or anything at that point? Okay.
No.
So then, what else happened? You had another type of surgery.
And then at 30, I had cervical cancer, and that was surgically removed. So that went well.
So again, just surgery? Did you have any
Right.
follow-up treatment like chemo or anything like that?
No, I was very lucky. But I did have a spot on my left breast. I just have a small scar, and they found a malignancy. And I had that surgically removed and then did receive radiation. And I was let's see, I was 9. I was probably 17 when that occurred. But it was not related, they didn't think.
Unrelated, but
Right,
again.
right.
So, I mean, you've had 2 or 3 kinds of cancer. I mean, getting cancer is not a...
Right.
How did it hit you when you were 30? I mean, 9, you're pretty young, you don't know what's going on, you're just going to have surgery. But at the age of 30, how did this make an impact on you?
Well, just to go back real quick.
Sure.
When I was 20, I was speaking to my parents, and I said, I have one of those funny lumps again. And they both looked at each other, and they said, I just knew. I knew something was wrong. And that's when I learned that it was cancerous, malignant. And so I went to radiologist and charge of nuclear medicine at UCLA, and he said nothing to worry about. But at that time, I thought, oh no,
It's back again.
That was kind of really scary.
Sure.
And then at 30, I thought, gosh, am I always going to get cancer? And how bad is it? And I'm young, and I didn't have children yet, and yeah, very scary.
I bet it was. Yeah.
And of course, I followed up. I always have Pap smear
Sure.
for a while, every 3 months, and then every 6 months, and
Normal follow-up.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
and then when I get a sore throat,
You're kind of wondering.
I get the mirror out, and oh yeah, I always do, and I say, Ron, feel my throat. I mean, it's just something in my mind that, and that would have no bearing, but it's just my own. So that's all. So I'm very lucky.
So everything's going along fine for the two of you.
Right.
You've retired, if I remember correctly, and living in Nevada. You've sold your business, and things are going well, and then you get some news. Tell us what happened.
Well, actually, in 2006, I got news that I had basal cell carcinoma on my nose.
Okay.
With the large nose, I guess being out in the sun around the swimming pools too
More
much,
exposed, huh?
it got more exposure than I cared to think about. So I had to have the basal cell removed. And about 6 months later, I had to go back and get some more removed. And then earlier this year, I got some bad news again. I had another cancer. I had prostate cancer. And that was pretty devastating.
What was that?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Michelle's thinking. How many times do I have to do this? And the answer is, I don't know.
You overcome one, and then something comes back again.
And,
so you get the news that you've got prostate cancer. It hits you like a 2x4.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's pretty shocking.
Now, you've heard me talking to our patients, and many times I'll tell them, you know, getting the diagnosis is good news. And people, how in the world could it be good news? And I say, well, you already had the cancer. You didn't know it. Now that you find out that you have it, you can do something about it. So it's good from the standpoint that you'll be able to become proactive and do something about it. But in your case, you found out, and it's pretty sobering. So what do you do?
Well, I was pretty lucky because I had a friend of mine who went through proton treatment down here at Loma last year, and his neighbor had done it 4 years prior to that. So I got to talk with them within about 2 days of finding out, and we had a real long, very nice conversation, and a gentleman by the name Steve Weitzman was having a golf tournament of which you were attending, and I don't think you won, by the way.
No, I didn't win.
and he invited me to an ice cream social, and I went to that on Monday night, and this Monday was less than 1 week of getting the news about the cancer. And I met you, and you gave me the spiel about the good news as soon as you came through the door, and it really caught me off guard because you said, when did you get the good news? And I was going, well, you know, I didn't think I got any good news, and I was going, why would he say that in my mind? And then you went on to the second phrase, and all of a sudden it's, yeah, it does make sense. It is good news because I can do something, and I have done something about it.
Well, I'd like to say that when I talked to you that night, that you made up your mind that night, you knew exactly what you're going to do, but that really you were still on a journey. You were still searching, trying to determine what you were going to do.
Well, absolutely. And again, I feel fortunate because all of the participants, not all, there were ladies there as well, but most of the participants there, the males, had all gone through some form of treatment for prostate cancer. Many had been here at Loma, That's where Steve met, and it was a reunion.
Yeah, we had a mini reunion of several former patients that actually came from different parts of the country to play this little tournament that we had. We call it the PGA, and for our listening audience, that's Proton Golfers Alumni Association.
Okay. Great.
But you came, and but what happened after that? You still had some struggles.
Well, I did. I went back and thought about it. My son hadn't returned from college that summer yet, so, and Steve had given me Bob Martini's book about you can beat prostate cancer, so I took that, and we decided, or I decided, that I wanted everybody in the family to read it. And we all read it independently, and then we were going to have a family discussion about it and see what everybody thought.
Well, that's a good point, because when you get cancer, it doesn't matter what kind of cancer, the whole family's involved. And you're going about it the right way. You're involving the whole family and kind of going through a decision-making process. So everybody's read the book.
And we pretty much were all right there together with, we should do this proton because it seems to be less invasive, less scary, potentially less side effects. So it marched to the top of the list pretty quickly. Yeah.
Well, for our listening audience, we've, are treating our 15,000th patient. 15,000 patients. Probably 65 to 70% of those have been prostate cancer. But we treat almost 100 different tumor sites, and we got some very exciting clinical trials to go on. But so you finally make the decision, and but it didn't quickly just everything fall into place. There were some things that went along the way. What happened? You couldn't immediately come once you made the decision, apparently.
Well, actually, we got to come down here fairly quickly because I found out at the end of May that I had the cancer, and I was down here on July the 1st for a consultation. The consultation didn't go quite as well as I had hoped, and I had to have a special MRI to determine whether cancer had left the prostate or not.
Now, when you say it didn't go as well as I expected, what do you mean?
Well, I was hoping I was going to be able to start treatment fairly soon and
have the consult, and a week or two later start the treatment and get this thing all behind me.
And then I could be doing something else right now as opposed to having come down here in the wintertime, but it's much cooler now, so it's not all bad.
So you had to have some additional tests.
Right.
And what did that reveal?
Well, the additional tests were somewhat inconclusive. I mean, parts that were revealing that the prostate cancer had not left and gone into the lymph nodes, so that was obvious.
It was contained.
It was contained, but there was a bulge on the MRI which was totally inconclusive. So my doctor decided that I should go on hormone therapy and take this as a fairly aggressive treatment, or a more aggressive a treatment than I had hoped for, and so I've been on Lupron since.
Which is one of the hormones that are offered.
Right.
Okay. Now, and again, what I'm hearing you say is the doctor was suggesting that, you know, we want to treat this. There's some questions here. To be on the safe side, let's treat a little bit more aggressively. So, in addition to the proton, you had hormones.
Right.
And then I'm assuming that you're getting both hormones, proton, and photon.
No.
You're just getting the hormones and the proton.
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
No photon.
So, has there been any side effects from the hormones?
Absolutely. I get to experience hot flashes. I haven't figured out why they call them hot flashes, because they last a lot longer than a flash.
Right.
Much longer than a flash, and it is pretty annoying. And I lose a lot of sleep over it. Sometimes it's difficult to go to sleep, and I usually wake up very early in the morning, and I get hot, and then I cool off, and then I'm cold, then I get hot and cool off and go, hey, it's like a yo-yo.
When you were going through this decision-making process, how did your son feel about this?
Well, he was pretty shocked, the same as the rest of us were when we told him.
He was visibly shaken.
Was he?
And he says, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. He says, well, I don't think you should wait too long to figure it out. And I said, well, I agree with that. And I said, well, the surgeon said that we could probably get this cut out in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. And he said, oh, he says, well, you know, Al was down here. Have you talked to Al? And I said, well, yeah, I've talked to Al. And I told him what had taken place, because I didn't want to tell him on the phone.
Sure.
Because he was driving across country. And
he was coming home?
He was coming home for the summer, and just didn't seem like the right thing to do, to talk on the phone about it.
Sure.
Wait till he gets
So when
home.
you sat down face to face, I mean, what was his reaction then?
Well, at first he didn't say very much. He was in shock. He was going, oh, well, now what are we going to do?
Crying.
Yeah.
So.
And, I mean, he was heading for London, going across the ocean after the summertime, and his father's got cancer. I mean, was this a consideration for him? Was he worried about this? Or?
Well, he was. He was worried. He said, well, you know, if we have to, I'll forego going to London.
Did he?
Yeah. But he's in London.
He's in
so
London.
This is good.
And you're finishing up the treatment. Well, so how did this impact you? You've been through cancer a couple times, and then you find out your husband's got cancer.
Well, I have to say that I take a black and white attitude. I knew what he had, and we have to fix it. And whatever the best treatment was, that was what we were going to do. We didn't look at the monetary cost.
It's pretty easy for her to say that, isn't it? You know, she's been through a couple kinds of cancer.
But I mean, that's the way I've always been. And I felt that I have to support him. Right now, he was visibly to me shaken. We read everything. We went to support groups. We did all the kind of research that you would want to do. So when you made that decision, you were making it well informed.
Sure.
He kind of left that out, but and I talked to everyone. You know how women talk. And
I know how some women talk. Okay, go ahead.
But they would say, "Oh, well, did you know her husband had cancer, prostate cancer?" So I kind of did networking, but we really did hours.
So you went to some support groups.
Oh yes, yes, and in fact we
Was that helpful?
Yes,
Yes.
in a very positive way to help us see that proton was probably the best choice for Ron. And I know there's different, you know,
different people make different choices.
exactly,
and they have to
different
make their
stages.
decision.
And there are different stages of things you have to look at differently by case. But we went and one support group we went to had maybe 9 men, and out of those 9 men, 6 of them had, each one had a different type
of treatment.
Yes, and it was wonderful to hear because we heard the pro and the con. And I have to say the cons really outweighed the pros on most of them.
On a lot of the differences.
Yes, and one thing, my son being young, he said, "Dad, you've got cancer. If the surgeon can do it, take it out." And we kind of said, well, that's not, you know, let's, and that's when he read the book and we told about Alan, you know, that whole thing. But it impacted me because maybe being in the medical field too, oh no.
Now, for our listening audience, when you say in the medical field,
Well, being the X-ray
what
tech,
were you doing?
and then I had a medical transcribing business. So, you know, I have a lot of knowledge. Nothing like a physician by any means, but a lot of knowledge. And that word cancer scares anyone. And Ron has always been very quiet. And I'd see him...
I can't imagine opposite attracting and everything, but go ahead.
So he'd be staring out the window. Or I'd say something, "What would you like for dinner?" He says, "Well, doesn't matter, does it?" You know, that. So we dealt with that. And once that, I'll tell you, it was so intense. And then once we made the decision to come down to Loma Linda, it was like a cloud lifted. And that sounds very dramatic, but it's
that's
not.
when you're in the decision-making process and trying to make up your mind, and sometimes you have information overload, and
exactly.
you see all these different alternatives, and some of them you don't like what you're hearing is some of the possibilities, and you've got cancer, and maybe the thing's still growing while we're talking about this, and I need to get it taken care of. And fortunately, and again for our listening audience, when you have prostate cancer, generally it's been growing for a little while. It's usually slow growing. You have some time. But there's some very important points here for our listening audience, because whether it's prostate cancer or some other kind of cancer, you want to be in charge of what's happening.
Exactly.
You want to be able to look at the different options, and there are always options. And not everybody makes the same choice or the same decision, but you have to make the decision. You have to take the responsibility for it. But it sounds like your whole family was involved in this. Right. And another good suggestion for our listening audience is, you know, go and talk to different people, as many different people as you can. And if there are different treatment modalities, talk to some of the people that have gone through these modalities. And then little by little, you begin to have the basis for making a decision. And until you make that decision, it's kind of hanging over your head. But it sounds like when you finally did make it, you know, there's kind of a peace. But then, unfortunately, you come down here, and instead of being able to get started, having the consult and then get started a couple weeks later, again, just kind of a little bump in the road. And at the time, it didn't seem like a bump. It seemed like a big cliff or a huge obstacle to overcome. But now, while you were in treatment, what were some of the things you were doing?
Well, we've been doing a lot of things. We've gotten involved in the, there's a potluck on Tuesday nights.
For the patients. For the patients,
then the patients pretty much run the thing. And Lynn likes to show up. I think he likes the food.
Oh, yes.
He loves the food.
Right.
And he always comes and gives us encouragement. Glad that we're doing it and keep going, and gives us announcements about other things that are happening. And we've done that. That's been fun. When we go to the Wednesday night support group that you lead, and the food there is even better with the wonderful sandwiches.
Oh, yeah.
The sandwiches is a big joke amongst the people who attend these, and probably always will be. Well, we've been doing that, and there's been some wonderful speakers there.
So you're keeping actively involved. And I often tell our patients, you know, the worst thing you can do is show up for your treatment, go back to where you're staying, sit in front of the TV, or isolate yourself, feel sorry for yourself. The best thing you can do is to get actively involved. And many times I'll say, you know, the treatments take place over there at the Proton Center in the gantry or the fixed beam line. But healing is a process. And the more people can get involved in the healing process and to stay actively involved, and the both of you have been very actively involved. What have you been doing while you've been down here?
Well, I've kind of been supporting him and going and doing, and then I think what we argue the most about, we bought ping pong paddles because we go to the Drayson Center for physical exercise.
Right.
And they have ping pong tables. And we always argue about, well, I won the last 2 games. No, you didn't. You won 1. So we really enjoyed friendships. I find, not because I'm sitting here, but I think Loma Linda has to be one of the most compassionate places I have been in.
Well,
They're heartwarming to you. Everyone has a smile. And, you know, kind of working at different hospitals, I feel that I can say it with certainty that I've never been in such a warm, loving environment.
Well,
Really,
I'm glad to hear that. As you know, Loma Linda has an undergirding philosophy to make man whole, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And again, for our listening audience here, you know, Ron and Michelle are, again, an example of people that have been confronted with the words, you have cancer, and not once, but twice, 3 times. I mean, and they've encountered it, they've overcome it, and they're survivors. Not only survivors, but they're thrivers. And for those of you in the listening audience, I know this week, some of you have heard some very sobering news. God's got a plan for your life. And they've given some excellent pointers here, you know, a support system, the family, friends, the church. There are many things that can provide a support system for you. But seek counsel. Look at the different options. And it's a diagnosis, not a death sentence. Again, I'm Lynn Martell with Journey of Hope, and I want to invite you to watch us each week. We want to thank you for your prayers and for your financial support. And until next week, God bless you each one. Look to Him. He'll open the way for you. Until then, goodbye.